The sound of the espresso machine hissing filled the silence between us as Ryan pushed back his chair, the metal legs scraping against the concrete floor of Brew and Bean. His wedding ring caught the afternoon light streaming through the window as he reached for his wallet, methodically placing a $20 bill on the scratched wooden table without meeting my eyes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I can't do this anymore, Lisa, he said, his voice flat and emotionless as if he were discussing the weather. I need space to figure things out. I watched him stand, adjusting his designer jacket with the same precision he used for everything else in his perfectly controlled life. The coffee shop buzzed with the usual Friday afternoon crowd, laptops clicking, conversations humming, completely oblivious to the fact that my world was imploding at table 14. "You're leaving me here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, still processing what was happening. We'd driven here together in his BMW, discussing dinner plans for the weekend just 30 minutes earlier. Ryan finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't sadness or regret. It was relief. "My Uber's already here," he said, glancing at his phone. "We'll talk when I get back from the conference next week." He walked away without looking back, leaving me sitting alone with 2 half-empty coffee cups and the devastating realization that my marriage of 8 years had just ended in the most casual, cruel way imaginable. Through the window, I watched him slide into a black sedan, saw him immediately pull out his phone, already moving on to whatever came next in his carefully orchestrated plan. The barista, a young woman with kind eyes and purple-streaked hair, approached my table hesitantly. "Are you okay, ma'am? Can I get you anything?" I looked up at her name tag, Amanda, and managed a weak smile. "I think I'll just sit here for a while, if that's okay." What I didn't know in that moment, as I sat surrounded by the comforting chaos of Brew and Bean, was that Ryan's abandonment would become the catalyst for the most empowering year of my life. That this coffee shop would become my sanctuary, my planning headquarters, and eventually, the launching pad for a revenge so perfectly executed that it would leave my soon-to-be ex-husband speechless. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 hours. After Ryan walked out of Brew and Bean, I was still sitting at the same table, nursing my 4th cup of coffee and trying to piece together how I'd missed the signs. The afternoon crowd had thinned, replaced by students with textbooks and freelancers settling in for the evening shift. Amanda had checked on me twice, each time with increasing concern. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through the past 6 months. But I'd been too trusting, too comfortable in the life we'd built together to recognize them for what they were. It started with the phone calls. Ryan had always been dedicated to his marketing firm, Thompson and Associates. But lately, his evening calls had become more frequent and more secretive. He'd step out onto our back porch or disappear into his home office, speaking in hushed tones that stopped abruptly whenever I entered the room. "New client from Seattle," he'd explain when I asked, flashing that practiced smile I'd once found charming. "Very demanding, wants constant updates." I accepted the explanation because questioning Ryan had never been part of our dynamic. He was the successful businessman, the one who made the big decisions while I focused on my graphic design work at Pacific Design Studios. It was a comfortable arrangement that had worked for 8 years. Then came the weekend trips, business conferences, he claimed in cities I'd never heard him mention before. When I suggested joining him for a weekend in San Francisco, something we'd done early in our marriage, his response was swift and dismissive. "It's all meetings and networking events," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "You'd be bored. Out of your mind." The intimacy between us had evaporated so gradually I almost didn't notice. Ryan's touches became perfunctory, his kisses brief and distracted. When I tried to initiate conversation about our relationship, he'd redirect to safer topics like home renovations or vacation plans that never materialized. our social life shifted too. We stopped hosting dinner parties at our Hawthorne district. Craftsman Home stopped meeting friends for drinks downtown. Ryan claimed work stress was wearing him down, that he needed quiet evenings to recharge. I adapted, as I always did, finding solace in my design projects and weekend visits to local art galleries. The financial changes were subtle, but consistent. Ryan had always handled our investments and major purchases, and I trusted his judgment completely. When he mentioned restructuring our portfolio for better returns, I signed whatever documents he placed in front of me without reading the fine print. "It's just moving money around for tax advantages," he assured me, his fingers flying across his laptop keyboard. "Very technical stuff, not worth boring you with the details." I should have insisted on understanding those details. I should have questioned why our monthly statements were suddenly being sent to his office instead of our home. I should have wondered why he'd started scheduling meetings with our financial advisor during hours when I was at work. But trust, once given completely, is hard to withdraw gradually. I loved Ryan, believed in our partnership, and couldn't imagine he would ever deliberately deceive me. That faith, which I'd considered one of my strengths, had blinded me to the systematic dismantling of everything we'd built together. The morning of our coffee shop meeting, Ryan had been unusually attentive. He'd made breakfast, something he rarely did anymore, and suggested we spend the afternoon together exploring the Pearl District. The gesture felt so unexpected, so reminiscent of our early dating days, that I felt a surge of hope. Maybe we were finally going to address the distance between us. "There's something I want to talk to you about," he'd said over scrambled eggs, his tone serious but not unkind. "Something important about our future." I'd assumed he meant counseling, maybe a romantic getaway to reconnect. When he suggested Brew and Bean as a neutral place to talk, I thought he was being considerate, choosing somewhere comfortable and private. Instead, he'd delivered his devastating announcement with the same clinical detachment he used in business. Presentations. 8 years of marriage dismissed as casually as canceling a subscription service. Sitting in that coffee shop, replaying every conversation and gesture from the past months, I began to see the pattern. Ryan hadn't just decided to leave me that afternoon. This had been planned, orchestrated with the same methodical precision he brought to his marketing campaigns. The realization hit me like ice water. While I'd been working late on design projects, assuming he was doing the same at his office, Ryan had been planning his exit strategy. The business trips, the financial restructuring, even the sudden interest in spending an afternoon together, it had all been calculated moves in a game I didn't know I was playing. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Caroline, who lived in Seattle with her family. "How was your day with Ryan? Did you two finally plan that anniversary trip?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "How do you explain that your husband just abandoned you in a coffee shop? That the anniversary trip you'd been discussing was probably never going to happen because there wouldn't be an anniversary to celebrate?" Instead of responding, I called our home phone, hoping against logic that Ryan had changed his mind, that he was waiting for me with an apology and an explanation. The call went straight to voicemail, my own cheerful voice from years ago promising we'd return the call soon. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was sitting in a coffee shop, surrounded by the energy and ambition of Portland's creative community, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Students hunched over laptops, writing papers and building futures. Entrepreneurs sketched business plans on napkins. Couples shared quiet conversations over lattes, the kind of intimate connection Ryan and I had lost months ago. Amanda approached my table again, this time carrying a fresh cup of coffee and a chocolate croissant I hadn't ordered. "On the house," she said gently, sliding into the chair Ryan had vacated hours earlier. "I'm about to close up, but you look like you could use some company." The kindness in her voice nearly broke me. Here was a stranger showing more concern for my well-being than my husband had in months. "My husband just left me," I said, the words feeling surreal as I spoke them aloud for the first time. Amanda's expression softened with understanding. Here? Today? I nodded, unable to trust my voice for more words. What an absolute coward, she said with quiet fury. Who does that? Who abandons someone in public like that? Her anger on my behalf felt validating in a way I hadn't expected. For months, I'd been making excuses for Ryan's behavior, finding ways to rationalize his distance and dismissiveness. Hearing someone else name it for what it was, cowardly, cruel, gave me permission to feel the full weight of my anger. I don't even know how to get home, I admitted, realizing Ryan had driven us here in his car. I was so shocked I didn't think to call a ride. I'll drive you, Amanda offered immediately. My shift ends in 10 minutes. We just need to finish closing up. As she bustled around the coffee shop, wiping down tables and shutting down equipment, I sat in the gathering dusk trying to process what came next. I'd go home to our empty house, sleep alone in our king-sized bed, and wake up tomorrow to face the reality that my marriage was over. But something else was stirring beneath the hurt and confusion. A small, fierce spark of anger that grew stronger with each passing minute. Ryan thought he could discard me like an unwanted business partnership, leaving me stranded and humiliated while he moved on to whatever life he'd been planning in secret. He was about to learn that Lisa Rodriguez wasn't the passive, accommodating wife he thought he'd married. The woman who'd built a successful design career, who'd supported his ambitions and social climbing for 8 years, who'd trusted him with her heart and her financial future, had depths he'd never bothered to discover. As Amanda locked up the coffee shop and we walked toward her beat-up Honda Civic, I made my first decision as a soon-to-be single woman. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. I wasn't going to quietly accept whatever settlement he'd probably already calculated in his favor. If Ryan wanted a divorce, he was going to get one. But it would be on my terms, not his. The drive home through Portland's tree-lined streets gave me time to think. Amanda filled the silence with gentle questions about my work, my interests, anything except the elephant in the car. Her kindness reminded me that there were good people in the world, people who showed up for strangers without expecting anything in return. When we pulled into my driveway, the house looked exactly the same as when we'd left that morning, but everything felt different. The carefully maintained garden, the freshly painted shutters, the 2-car garage where only my Subaru now sat. It all looked like a stage set for a life that no longer existed. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Amanda asked, studying my face with concern. "No, but thank you," I said, meaning it. "You've done more than enough, more than anyone else has today." She handed me her phone number written on a brew and bean napkin. "Call me if you need anything, seriously. I work most days and I'm a good listener." After she drove away, I stood in my driveway for a long moment, looking at the house Ryan and I had bought 3 years ago. We'd spent weekends painting rooms and planting flowers, talking about the future we'd build within these walls. Children. Maybe. Dinner parties with friends, growing old together in rocking chairs on the front porch. None of that was going to happen now. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But as I unlocked the front door and stepped into the silent house, I realized something that surprised me. The prospect of building a different future, one entirely of my own making, didn't terrify me the way I thought it would. It excited me. Ryan had made his choice, but he'd also given me something unexpected: freedom. For the first time in 8 years, I didn't have to consider anyone else's opinions or desires when making decisions about my life. I could do whatever I wanted, go wherever I pleased, become whoever I chose to be. The thought was intoxicating, and as I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my living room surrounded by the furniture we'd chosen together, I began to formulate a plan. Ryan might have gotten the first move in this game, but he'd underestimated his opponent. I wasn't just going to survive this divorce, I was going to thrive. And when the dust settled, Ryan Thompson was going to realize that abandoning me at Brew and Bean was the biggest mistake of his life, The first thing I did the next morning was something I should have done years ago. I called our bank and requested complete statements for all our accounts going back 12 months. The customer service representative, a cheerful woman named Janet, was happy to help once I verified my identity and explained that I needed the records for tax purposes. "We can email those to you within the hour, Mrs. Thompson," she said. "Is there anything specific you're looking for?" "Just want to make sure everything's in order," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "My husband handles most of our finances, but I like to stay informed." While waiting for the statements, I drove to Pacific Design Studios, my sanctuary for the past 5 years. The converted warehouse space buzzed with creative energy. Designers hunched over monitors creating brands and campaigns for clients across the Pacific Northwest. My corner workstation overlooked the Willamette River, a view that usually calmed my mind and sparked inspiration. Today, however, I couldn't concentrate on the logo redesign waiting on my computer screen. My phone chimed with an email notification, and my stomach clenched as I saw the bank's address in my inbox. Taking a deep breath, I opened the attachment and began scrolling through months of financial activity. What I discovered made me physically nauseous. Over the past 8 months, Ryan had been systematically transferring money from our joint accounts into what appeared to be a personal account I'd never seen before. The amounts varied, never quite large enough to trigger automatic notifications, but substantial when added together. Nearly $60,000 had disappeared from our shared savings. But that wasn't the worst of it. I found regular payments to something called Cascade Properties LLC that I didn't recognize. A quick internet search revealed it was a property management company specializing in luxury apartment rentals downtown. The monthly payments matched what someone might pay for a high-end one-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District. My hands trembled as I continued reading. There were charges at restaurants I'd never visited, jewelry stores where I'd never shopped, and what appeared to be monthly payments to a storage facility across town. Ryan hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been building an entirely separate life while pretending our marriage was simply going through a rough patch. "Lisa, you look like you've seen a ghost," said Marcus Chen, the financial consultant, who occasionally worked with our design studio on client projects. He'd appeared at my desk carrying 2 cups of coffee from the break room, his expression concerned. I'd always liked Marcus. He was thoughtful and direct, with an analytical mind that cut through complex problems to find elegant solutions. We'd worked together on several branding projects for his financial planning clients, and I'd come to respect his insights about both business and human nature. "Actually, I think I might have," I said, closing my laptop screen. "Marcus, can I ask you something? Hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to hide assets during a divorce, how would they do it?" His dark eyes sharpened with interest. "That's a very specific hypothetical question. Are you asking as a designer working on a project, or as someone who might need some practical advice?" The concern in his voice, so different from Ryan's dismissive tone, nearly brought tears to my eyes. The second one. Marcus sat down in the empty chair next to my workstation. "Tell me what's going on." For the next hour, I laid out everything. Ryan's abandonment at the coffee shop, the financial irregularities I'd discovered, the months of emotional distance I'd rationalized away. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timing or amounts. "This is systematic financial abuse," he said when I finished. "Your husband has been preparing for this divorce for months, possibly longer. The good news is that everything he's done leaves a paper trail. The bad news is that he's probably moved more money than you've discovered so far." My heart sank. "How much more?" "Let's find out. Do you have access to your tax returns from last year? Investment account statements? I can help you trace where everything went, but I'll need to see the complete financial picture." That afternoon, Marcus accompanied me to our house while Ryan was presumably at his office. Walking through the rooms we'd shared felt surreal, like visiting a museum exhibit of my former life. Everything looked the same, but the emotional weight had completely shifted. In Ryan's home office, we found filing cabinets filled with documents I'd never seen. Tax returns that showed income from investments I didn't know we owned, partnership agreements for business ventures he'd never mentioned, insurance policies that named his mother as beneficiary instead of me. "When did you last review these documents?" Marcus asked, photographing pages with his phone. "I never did," I admitted, feeling foolish. Ryan always said finance bored me, that he was protecting me from having to worry about money. Marcus looked up from a particularly complex investment statement. He was protecting himself, not you. "Look at this." He showed me a document establishing what appeared to be a family trust. "This was created 18 months ago. Your signature is on it, but do you remember signing this?" I studied the paperwork, recognizing my signature but having no memory of the document itself. "I sign a lot of things Ryan brings home. Tax forms, insurance updates. He usually explains them briefly, and I trust his judgment. This trust removes your ownership stake in several major assets," Marcus explained gently. "Your house, your investment portfolio, even your husband's business interests. According to this paperwork, you voluntarily relinquished claim to most of your marital assets." The room spun around me. "That's impossible. I would never agree to that." "Unless you didn't understand what you were signing," Marcus said grimly. "This is sophisticated financial manipulation, Lisa. Your husband didn't just decide to leave you yesterday. He's been planning this for at least 2 years." We spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything. Marcus photographed bank statements, investment records, and legal documents while I searched through Ryan's desk drawers for anything else that might be relevant. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath old business cards and promotional materials, I found a folder that made my blood run cold. It contained printed emails between Ryan and someone named Diane Walsh, dating back over a year. The messages weren't explicitly romantic, but the tone was intimate and familiar. They discussed restaurants, weekend trips, and future plans that didn't include me. In one particularly revealing exchange, Diane mentioned apartment hunting in the Pearl District, and Ryan responded with enthusiasm about their fresh start. "Who's Diane Walsh?" Marcus asked, reading over my shoulder. "I have no idea," I said, my voice hollow. "But apparently she's been planning our future life with my husband." Marcus pulled out his phone and ran a quick internet search. "Diane Walsh, marketing coordinator at Brennan & Associates. That's your husband's biggest competitor, isn't it?" It was. Brennan & Associates had been trying to poach Ryan for years, offering increasingly lucrative packages to entice him away from his family's firm. Ryan had always claimed loyalty to Thompson & Associates, joking that his father would disown him if he ever jumped ship. "This gets worse," Marcus said, scrolling through more search results. "Look at this." He showed me a recent Portland Business Journal article about Brennan & Associates' expansion plans. The piece mentioned their newest senior partner, Ryan Thompson, who would be heading their new Seattle office. The article was dated 3 weeks ago. "He already took the job," I whispered. "He's been planning to move to Seattle with her." Everything clicked into place. The mysterious client calls from Seattle, the weekend business trips, the financial maneuvering and asset transfers. Ryan hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been systematically dismantling our life together while building a new one with someone else. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. 8 years of marriage, and I'd been nothing more than an inconvenience to be managed until he could execute his exit strategy. "Lisa," Marcus said gently, "we need to move quickly. If your husband is relocating to Seattle, he might try to accelerate the timeline for finalizing this financial restructuring. You need legal representation, and you need it now." He helped me gather copies of everything we'd found, organizing the documents into neat piles that told the story of my marriage's destruction. As we worked, I found myself studying Marcus's face, noting the careful way he handled each piece of evidence, the genuine anger in his expression as the scope of Ryan's deception became clear. "Why are you helping me?" I asked as we loaded the last of the documents into my car. Marcus paused, his hands resting on a box of financial records. "Because what your husband did is unconscionable. And because I've seen too many people, especially women, get financially devastated by divorce because they trusted the wrong person with their future." He looked at me directly, his expression serious. "But also because I think you're stronger than you realize. Most people would be completely paralyzed by what you discovered today. You're already planning your next move." He was right. Beneath the hurt and betrayal, something fierce was growing in my chest. Ryan thought he'd played the perfect game, manipulating me into signing away my rights while he built a secret life with his new partner. He probably expected me to collapse, to accept whatever settlement he offered just to make the pain stop. Instead, I was furious, and fury, I was beginning to realize, could be an incredibly motivating force. That evening, I sat in my living room surrounded by boxes of evidence, feeling like a detective who just cracked a major case. Every document told part of the story of how my husband had systematically betrayed our marriage vows and our financial partnership. But I also felt something unexpected: excitement. For the first time in months, I had a project that engaged my full attention and skills. As a graphic designer, I was trained to see patterns, to organize complex information into clear, compelling narratives. The skills that made me good at my job were exactly what I needed to fight back against Ryan's carefully orchestrated plan. I opened my laptop and began creating a digital timeline of everything we'd discovered: dates, amounts, transfers, emails, business decisions. The pattern that emerged was damning in its clarity. Ryan had been preparing for this divorce since before I'd even realized our marriage was in trouble. My phone rang, interrupting my work. The caller ID showed my sister Caroline's number, and I remembered her unanswered text from the day before. "Lisa, finally." I was starting to worry. "How did yesterday go with Ryan?" I took a deep breath. "Caroline, I need to tell you something. Ryan left me." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds before Caroline's voice exploded through the speaker. "He what? What do you mean he left you?" I explained the coffee shop abandonment, the financial discoveries, the evidence of his affair and secret job in Seattle. Caroline listened with increasing outrage, occasionally interrupting with expletives that would have made our mother blush. "That manipulative bastard," she said when I finished. "Lisa, you have to destroy him. Legally, financially, socially, he can't be allowed to get away with this." Her fierce loyalty felt like armor around my heart. "I'm working on it. I found a financial consultant who's helping me trace everything Ryan hid. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a divorce attorney." "Good. And if you need anything at all, David and I are here for you. We can drive down from Seattle this weekend if you want company." After we hung up, I felt less alone than I had since Ryan walked out of Bruin Bean. I had allies now. Marcus with his financial expertise, Caroline with her unwavering support, even Amanda from the coffee shop who'd shown me kindness when I needed it most. Ryan might have gotten a head start in this game, but he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. For 8 years, he'd seen only the accommodating wife who trusted his decisions and didn't ask inconvenient questions. He had no idea that beneath that surface lay a woman capable of strategic thinking, careful planning, and, when necessary, ruthless execution. I spent the rest of the evening researching divorce attorneys, reading reviews and case studies, looking for someone with a reputation for handling complex financial cases. By midnight, I had a list of 3 candidates and appointments scheduled for the following week. As I finally headed upstairs to bed, I paused in the doorway of Ryan's office. Tomorrow, I'd change the locks on our house. I'd open my own bank account at a different institution. I'd begin the process of legally protecting myself from further financial manipulation. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd lost. Not just a marriage, but the future I'd imagined we were building together. The trust that had been the foundation of my adult life. The comfortable certainty that someone loved me enough to put my well-being before their own desires. Ryan had taken all of that away. But in its place, something new was growing. A fierce determination to rebuild my life on my own terms. A growing awareness of my own strength and capabilities. And, perhaps most importantly, a crystal clear understanding of what I would and wouldn't accept from anyone else going forward. Ryan Thompson was about to learn that destroying someone's life wasn't as easy as he thought it would be, especially when that someone had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The divorce attorney's office occupied the 32nd floor of a downtown Portland high-rise, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city I'd called home for 8 years. Kate Sullivan had come highly recommended by Marcus, who'd worked with her on several complex financial cases. Her reputation for aggressive advocacy and high-stakes divorces was exactly what I needed. Kate herself was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of the severe, intimidating figure I'd imagined, she was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an immediately warm demeanor. She greeted me with a firm handshake and guided me to a comfortable seating area away from her imposing desk. "Marcus filled me in on the basics of your situation," she said, settling into her chair with a legal pad. "But I'd like to hear everything in your own words, starting from the beginning." For the third time in a week, I found myself recounting the story of my marriage's destruction. But this time felt different. Kate listened not just with sympathy, but with the focused attention of someone already formulating a strategy. She took detailed notes, occasionally asking pointed questions about timing, documentation, and witnesses. "Your husband made several critical errors," she said when I finished. "First, he left a comprehensive paper trail of his asset manipulation. Second, he involved his new partner in business decisions that affect your marital property. And third, he underestimated you." She leaned forward, her expression intensifying. "Lisa, what your husband did constitutes fraud. The documents you signed under false pretenses, the hidden accounts, the systematic transfer of marital assets, all of it is legally actionable. We're not just talking about a divorce settlement here. We're talking about potential criminal charges." The words sent a thrill of vindication through me. What does that mean practically? It means we have significant leverage. Your husband thinks he's been clever, but he's actually been building our case for us. The trust documents alone could be grounds for voiding every financial transaction he's made over the past 2 years. Kate opened a thick folder and spread several documents across the coffee table between us. "Based on what Marcus shared with me, I've been researching your husband's business activities. Thompson & Associates isn't just a family marketing firm. It's been operating as a shell company for some very interesting investments." She showed me corporate filings that revealed Ryan's father's company had significant stakes in several Portland-area real estate developments, including a luxury apartment complex in the Pearl District where Ryan was apparently living with Diane. "Your husband doesn't just work for his father's company," Kate explained. "According to these documents, he owns 25% of it. That's marital property, regardless of any trust agreements you may have signed." The scope of what I was entitled to began to crystallize. This wasn't just about the house and savings accounts Ryan had manipulated. I was potentially entitled to a quarter of a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. "There's more," Kate continued. "Thompson & Associates recently secured a major contract with the city of Portland for downtown revitalization marketing. The contract is worth $800,000 over 3 years. If your husband tries to take that expertise to his new job in Seattle, he'll be violating non-compete agreements and taking city property with him." I stared at the documents, trying to process the magnitude of what she was telling me. "Ryan? Never mentioned any of this. I thought his father's company was just a small local firm." That's because your husband and his family have been systematically excluding you from the family business, while using your marriage to legitimize their financial structure. The trust documents you signed? They made you a silent partner in their real estate investments while removing your right to vote on business decisions or access profits. Kate's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a slight smile. That's Marcus. He's been working with a forensic accountant to trace your husband's hidden assets. Would you like him to join us? He's downstairs in the coffee shop. I nodded, curious about what else they'd discovered. 10 minutes later, Marcus arrived carrying a laptop bag and wearing the grim expression of someone who'd uncovered something significant. Show her what we found, Kate said without preamble. Marcus opened his laptop and pulled up a complex spreadsheet. Lisa, your husband hasn't just been hiding money from you. He's been systematically stealing from his father's company to fund his new life. The spreadsheet showed a pattern of unauthorized transfers from Thompson and Associates client accounts into the personal account Ryan had been using to fund his apartment and secret life with Diane. This is embezzlement, Marcus explained. Ryan's been skimming money from client projects and covering it up by manipulating the company's books. The total amount is over $200,000. Kate leaned forward with obvious satisfaction. Your husband isn't just facing a contentious divorce, Lisa. He's potentially facing federal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement. The room felt like it was spinning. In the span of a week, I'd gone from abandoned wife to potential key witness in a criminal investigation. What happens now? Now we give your husband one chance to make this right, Kate said. We're going to arrange a meeting with him and his attorney. We'll present our evidence and offer him a choice. He can agree to a fair divorce settlement that returns all marital assets to their proper place, or we can let the federal authorities sort out his financial crimes. Marcus closed his laptop with a decisive snap. There's something else you should know, Lisa. The forensic accountant found evidence that your husband's new employer, Brennan and Associates, may have been aware of his financial irregularities when they hired him. They could be complicit in helping him launder stolen funds. Kate's smile was predatory. Which means this isn't just about your divorce anymore. This could bring down one of Portland's most prominent marketing firms. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of what they'd uncovered. 3 days ago, I'd been a devastated wife sitting alone in a coffee shop. Now I was at the center of a potential corporate scandal that could reshape Portland's business landscape. I need some air, I said, standing up abruptly. Kate and Marcus exchanged a concerned look. This is a lot to process, Kate said gently. Why don't we take a break? You can think about how you want to proceed. I walked to the window, looking down at the city spreading out below. Somewhere down there, Ryan was probably sitting in his Pearl District apartment with Diane, believing he'd successfully escaped, his old life without consequences. He had no idea that his carefully constructed plan was about to collapse around him. The thought should have filled me with satisfaction, but instead, I felt strangely empty. This wasn't the life I'd wanted. I'd never aspired to be the wronged wife seeking revenge through the legal system. I'd wanted the simple happiness of a loving marriage and shared future. But Ryan had taken that possibility away when he chose deception over honesty, manipulation over communication. The man I'd married either never existed or had transformed into someone unrecognizable. Either way, I couldn't save a relationship with someone who viewed me as an obstacle to overcome rather than a partner to cherish. Lisa, Marcus said softly, joining me at the window. I know this feels overwhelming, but you have more power in this situation than your husband realizes. The question is how you want to use it. I turned to face him, noting again the genuine concern in his expression. Over the past week, Marcus had become more than just a helpful consultant. He'd become a friend, someone who seemed to understand not just the financial complexities of my situation, but the emotional weight of rebuilding a life from scratch. What would you do? I asked him. If someone had stolen years of your life while pretending to love you? Marcus considered the question seriously. I'd want justice. Not just financial compensation, but acknowledgement of the harm that was done. Your husband didn't just steal money, Lisa. He stole your ability to make informed choices about your own life. Kate approached us, holding 3 cups of coffee from the office machine. Whatever you decide, you don't have to decide today. But you should know that time is a factor. If Ryan realizes we're onto him, he might try to hide more assets or flee to Seattle permanently. I accepted the coffee gratefully, using the warmth of the cup to ground myself in the moment. What's the timeline for confronting him? I can arrange a meeting for next week, Kate said. I'll contact his attorney and request a settlement conference. We'll present our evidence and see how he responds. And if he doesn't respond favorably? Kate's smile was sharp. Then we file both divorce papers and a criminal complaint simultaneously. The media attention alone would destroy his new career before it starts. The thought of Ryan's public humiliation after months of private manipulation held undeniable appeal. But something else was stirring in my mind. A different kind of plan that went beyond simple revenge. There's something I want to explore first, I said slowly, before we confront Ryan directly. Marcus and Kate waited expectantly. I want to understand Thompson and Associates better. If Ryan's been stealing from the company, and if his father's been using our marriage to legitimize questionable business practices, then there might be other victims. Other people who deserve to know what's been happening. Kate nodded approvingly. That's a smart approach. Building a broader case strengthens your position and provides more options for resolution. I can help with the financial investigation, Marcus offered. But you'll need someone with business connections to gather intelligence about the company's operations and reputation. I thought about my network of contacts in Portland's design community. In 8 years of working at Pacific Design Studios, I'd collaborated with dozens of local businesses, including several that had used Thompson and Associates for marketing services. I know people who've worked with Ryan's company, I said, business owners who might be willing to share their experiences if they knew there were potential irregularities. Over the next hour, we outlined a strategy for gathering information about Thompson and Associates' business practices. Kate would handle the legal research, Marcus would continue tracing financial irregularities, and I would discreetly reach out to former clients and business contacts. Be careful, Kate warned as we prepared to leave. If Ryan suspects you're investigating him, he might accelerate his plans or try to intimidate you into backing down. Let him try, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. I'm done being intimidated by Ryan Thompson. As we rode down in the elevator, Marcus touched my arm gently. Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we start digging deeper, there's no going back. Your marriage will be completely over, and your husband's life is going to be destroyed. I looked at him directly, seeing not just professional concern, but something deeper in his eyes. My marriage was already over. Ryan destroyed it months ago while I was still trying to save it. Now I'm just deciding whether he gets to destroy. Me too. The elevator doors opened and we stepped out into the bustling lobby. Around us, people hurried to appointments and meetings, pursuing their own ambitions and dreams. For the first time in months, I felt like I was one of them again. Not a passive victim of someone else's decisions, but an active participant in shaping my own future. Ryan had given me an unexpected gift when he abandoned me at Brew and Bean. He'd freed me from the illusion that our marriage was worth saving, that his love was worth fighting for. In trying to destroy my life, he'd accidentally given me permission to build a better one. And I was just getting started. 2 weeks of careful investigation had transformed me from a devastated wife into something I'd never been before, a woman with a mission. Every morning, I woke up energized by the growing file of evidence that painted an increasingly damning picture of Ryan's activities and his family's business practices. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Amanda from Brew and Bean had become a regular confidant, our coffee shop conversations evolving from sympathy sessions into strategic planning meetings. She'd mentioned that her roommate worked as a bookkeeper for several small businesses in Portland, including two that had used Thompson and Associates for marketing campaigns. Chelsea mentioned some weird billing practices, Amanda said one Thursday afternoon as I sat at my usual table, laptop open and documents spread around me like a war room. Clients getting charged for services they never received, invoices that didn't match the work actually delivered. I looked up from the financial spreadsheet Marcus had helped me create. Would she be willing to talk to me? Probably. She's been worried about some of the stuff she's seen but didn't know who to report it to. These are small business owners. Lisa. They trust the companies they hire and don't always scrutinize every invoice. That evening, I met Chelsea Martinez at a quiet restaurant in the Hawthorne district. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her late 20s, with the careful demeanor of someone who'd seen too much and wasn't sure who to trust. Amanda said you're having problems with Thompson and Associates, she said once we'd ordered. What kind of problems? I gave her the basic outline of my situation without mentioning the divorce or criminal investigation. Chelsea listened with growing recognition, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions about specific practices I described. That matches what I've been seeing, she said when I finished. Thompson and Associates has been systematically overbilling their clients. But they're smart about it, never enough to trigger a major audit, but consistent enough to add up to significant money over time. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of an invoice from one of her clients. This company paid for a 6-month social media campaign. According to the invoice, Thompson and Associates created and managed content for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But when my client asked to see the analytics, they were told the data wasn't available due to platform changes. I studied the invoice, noting the detailed breakdown of services and hours. It looked professional and legitimate. How do you know the work wasn't actually done? Chelsea's expression darkened. Because I handle my client's social media. Passwords. I can log in and see exactly what was posted and when. Thompson and Associates did about 3 weeks of actual work but billed for 6 months. The pattern was becoming clear. Ryan and his father weren't just stealing from their own accounts. They were systematically defrauding small business clients who trusted them and didn't have the resources to conduct detailed audits. How many clients are we talking about? I asked. In my portfolio alone, at least 8 companies over the past 2 years, and I only handle bookkeeping for about 20 businesses total. Chelsea paused, calculating. If Thompson and Associates is doing this across their entire client base, we could be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent billing. I thought about the Portland business community, the network of small companies and startups that formed the backbone of the city's economy. If Ryan's family was systematically preying on these businesses, the impact went far beyond my personal situation. Would your clients be willing to file complaints if they knew what was happening? Chelsea nodded emphatically. Absolutely. These are honest business owners trying to build something legitimate. They'd be furious if they knew they were being ripped off. Over the next week, I worked with Chelsea to document every suspicious invoice and billing irregularity she'd identified. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his forensic accounting work, tracing the flow of money through Thompson and Associates' various accounts and shell companies. The picture that emerged was staggering in its scope and sophistication. Ryan and his father had created a business model based on systematic fraud, using their reputation in Portland's business community to legitimize a complex scheme that stolen money from clients, employees, and even the city itself. Kate Sullivan was ecstatic when I presented our findings at another strategy meeting in her downtown office. This is beyond what I imagined, she said, reviewing the evidence spread across her conference table. We're not just talking about your divorce anymore, Lisa. This is a conspiracy that involves mail fraud, wire fraud, theft of city funds, and systematic client deception. Marcus pulled up a detailed financial chart on his laptop. The total amount we can document is over $2 million. That's federal crime territory, with potential prison sentences measured in decades rather than years. I stared at the numbers, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. What does this mean for the other victims? The small businesses that were defrauded. It means they'll get their money back, Kate said firmly. Once we present this evidence to federal authorities, they'll freeze Thompson and Associates' assets and begin the process of restitution. Your husband and his father will be forced to repay every penny, plus damages. The thought of justice for all those small business owners was satisfying, but something else was taking shape in my mind, a plan that went beyond simple legal victory. What happens to Thompson and Associates client contracts when this all comes out? I asked. Kate consulted her notes. They'll be voided immediately. No legitimate business will want to work with a company under federal investigation for fraud. And the city contract for downtown revitalization? Gone. The city will have to find a new marketing firm to handle the project. An idea began forming, audacious in its scope, but perfectly logical in its execution. What if I knew someone who could take over those contracts? Someone with the expertise and local connections to serve those clients properly? Marcus looked at me with growing understanding. You're thinking about starting your own company? I'm thinking about more than that, I said, my excitement building as the plan crystallized. I'm thinking about creating something that serves this community the way it deserves to be served. Honest marketing, fair pricing, genuine results. Kate leaned back in her chair, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You want to build your own empire on the ruins of your husband's company. Not an empire. A business that treats clients with respect and delivers actual value. I looked around the table at my allies, seeing understanding and approval in their faces. Ryan thought he could discard me and move on to a bigger, better life. Instead, he's going to watch me build the company he was too corrupt and lazy to create. The next month was a whirlwind of preparation. While Kate handled the legal complexities of filing federal complaints and divorce papers, I worked with Marcus to establish Rodriguez Marketing Solutions. We set up proper business accounts, obtained the necessary licenses, and began reaching out to the businesses that would soon be abandoned by Thompson and Associates. The response was overwhelmingly positive. When I explained that I was launching a marketing firm focused on transparent billing and measurable results, business owners who'd been frustrated with Thompson and Associates practices jumped at the chance to work with someone new. We've been unhappy with their service for months, admitted Janet Flores, owner of a successful food truck business that had paid Thompson and Associates for social media management. But we didn't know where else to turn. Having someone local who understands our community makes all the difference. Within 3 weeks, Rodriguez Marketing Solutions had signed contracts with 12 former Thompson and Associates clients, plus 3 new businesses that had heard about our launch through word of mouth. The monthly revenue from those contracts alone would support a comfortable lifestyle while I built the company into something larger. But the real coup came when the city of Portland reached out directly. Kate had discreetly informed the appropriate officials about the federal investigation into Thompson and Associates, and they were scrambling to find a replacement contractor for the downtown revitalization project. Your proposal is exactly what we're looking for, said David Kim, the city's economic development director, after I presented Rodriguez Marketing Solutions' capabilities. Local ownership, transparent pricing, and a track record of working with Portland businesses? When can you start? The city contract alone was worth more than I'd ever imagined earning in my entire career. Combined with my growing client base and the divorce settlement that would return my share of Ryan's stolen assets, I was looking at financial independence beyond anything I'd dreamed possible. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Marcus agreed to leave his consulting practice and join Rodriguez Marketing Solutions as Chief Financial Officer and business partner. You're building something special here, he said over dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. Something that serves people instead of exploiting them. I want to be part of that. There was something else in his eyes when he spoke, something that had been growing between us over the weeks of working closely together. The professional partnership was evolving into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared values, rather than the manipulation and control that had defined my marriage to Ryan. "Are you sure?" I asked. "This isn't going to be easy. Once the federal charges become public, there's going to be intense scrutiny of everyone involved." Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. "I've never been more sure of anything. You're not just building a business, Lisa. You're building a new life. And if you'll have me, I'd like to build it with you." The warmth in his voice, the sincerity in his expression, reminded me what genuine partnership felt like. Not the one-sided arrangement I'd accepted in my marriage, but true collaboration between equals who respected and supported each other. "I'd like that too," I said, squeezing his hand. As we sat there planning the future of Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, my phone buzzed with a text message. The sender's name made my stomach clench. Ryan. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Brew and Bean. Come alone." I showed the message to Marcus, who frowned deeply. He knows something. Kate must have contacted his attorney about the settlement conference. "Good," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. It's time for Ryan to learn what happens when you underestimate someone. The next day, I would face my husband for the first time since he'd abandoned me at that same coffee shop 5 weeks earlier. But this time, I wouldn't be the devastated wife begging for explanations. I'd be the CEO of a successful company, backed by federal authorities and surrounded by allies who believed in my vision. Ryan Thompson was about to discover that destroying someone's life wasn't as simple as he'd thought, especially when that someone had used the wreckage to build something stronger than what existed before. I arrived at Brew and Bean 15 minutes early, deliberately choosing the same table where Ryan had abandoned me 5 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me that we were meeting in the place where my old life had ended and my new one had begun. Amanda spotted me immediately and brought over my usual coffee without being asked, along with something extra. "Chocolate croissant." "For courage," she said with a conspiratorial wink. "And just so you know, if that man gives you any trouble, I've got your back." I smiled gratefully, feeling the warmth of genuine friendship. Amanda had become more than just a friendly barista over the past weeks. She'd been my sounding board, my cheerleader, and sometimes my voice of reason when the magnitude of what I was attempting threatened to overwhelm me. Ryan walked through the door exactly at 2 o'clock, his punctuality as rigid as ever. He'd always prided himself on precise timing, viewing it as a sign of professionalism and control. Today, however, his usual confident stride seemed forced, and I noticed the tension in his shoulders as he scanned the coffee shop. When his eyes found mine, I saw something I'd never seen before in 8 years of marriage: uncertainty. Ryan Thompson, who'd orchestrated my public humiliation with such calculated cruelty, now looked like a man who wasn't entirely sure he was in control of the situation. He approached the table cautiously, as if I might bolt or cause a scene. The thought almost made me laugh. 5 weeks ago, I might have done exactly that. Today, I was exactly where I wanted to be. "Lisa," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "You look good." It was true. The stress and heartbreak of the first weeks after our separation had given way to something else entirely. I'd lost weight, but it was the weight of trying to please someone who couldn't be pleased. My skin was clearer, my posture straighter, my eyes brighter. Success, it turned out, was an excellent beauty treatment. "Thank you," I replied pleasantly. "How are things in Seattle?" Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd expected to control this conversation, to set the tone and agenda. My casual reference to his secret relocation plans had clearly caught him off guard. "I don't know what you think you know," he started, but I held up a hand to stop him. "Ryan, let's not waste time with denials. I know about Diane Walsh. I know about your new job at Brennan & Associates. I know about the apartment in the Pearl. district and the systematic transfer of our marital assets to accounts I was never told about. Each revelation landed like a physical blow. Ryan's carefully maintained composure cracked a little more with every sentence, his face cycling through surprise, anger, and what might have been fear. "You've been busy," he said, attempting to regain his footing. "But whatever you think you've discovered, it doesn't change the fundamental problem with our marriage. We grew apart, Lisa. It happens." "You're right," I agreed, taking a sip of my coffee. "It does happen. What doesn't usually happen is one spouse systematically defrauding the other while planning their exit strategy with their affair partner." Ryan leaned forward, his voice dropping to an angry whisper. "Be very careful, Lisa. You're making accusations that could have serious consequences." "Yes," I said calmly. "They could." The silence stretched between us, filled with the ambient noise of the coffee shop around us. Other customers went about their normal Friday afternoon routines, oblivious to the fact that a marriage was being dissected at table 14. "What do you want?" Ryan finally asked. "I want you to understand what's going to happen next," I said, opening the folder I'd brought with me. "Kate Sullivan, my attorney, will be filing divorce papers on Monday morning. Along with those papers, she'll be submitting a criminal complaint to the FBI regarding your embezzlement activities at Thompson & Associates." Ryan's face went pale. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can prove everything." I slid a single document across the table. "This is a summary of the forensic accounting analysis conducted by Marcus Chen, my business partner. It details over $2 million in fraudulent billing, unauthorized asset transfers, and embezzled client funds." Ryan stared at the document, without touching it, as if it might contaminate him. "Marcus Chen? The financial consultant from your design studio?" "The same. He's also the chief financial officer of Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, my new company." I paused for effect. "We'll be taking over the city contract for downtown revitalization that you'll be losing when Thompson & Associates comes under federal investigation." The mention of the city contract hit home. Ryan's entire plan had been built around leveraging that prestigious project to establish himself at Brennan & Associates. Without it, his value to his new employer would be significantly diminished. "You can't do this," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. "I'm not doing anything to you, Ryan. I'm simply allowing the consequences of your choices to unfold naturally." I reached into my folder and pulled out another document. This is a list of Thompson & Associates clients who have agreed to share their billing records with federal investigators. 12 businesses so far, with more being contacted daily. Ryan's hands were shaking slightly as he finally picked up the forensic accounting summary. His eyes scanned the numbers, and I watched as the full scope of his exposure became clear to him. "How did you find all this?" "You taught me something valuable, Ryan. You showed me that people will share information with someone they trust, if they believe it will help prevent others from being hurt." I smiled. "It turns out that when you treat people with honesty and respect, they respond very differently than when you manipulate and exploit them." Amanda appeared at our table with a fresh pot of coffee, her timing perfect as always. "Refill?" she asked brightly, her eyes fixed on Ryan with barely concealed hostility. "Yes, please," I said. "Ryan won't be staying long." After Amanda moved away, Ryan leaned forward desperately. "Lisa, we can work this out. The marriage is over, I understand that, but this legal action will destroy both our lives. My career, your reputation, everything we built together." "Everything we built together was built on lies," I replied. "And my reputation will be fine. It turns out that being the victim of fraud generates quite a bit of sympathy and business opportunities." I reached into my folder one more time and pulled out a business card for Rodriguez Marketing Solutions. "I've already replaced half of your father's client base. By the time the federal investigation concludes, I'll probably have the rest of them too." Ryan stared at the business card with something approaching horror. "You're destroying my family's company." "No, Ryan. You destroyed your family's company when you decided to use it as a vehicle for fraud. I'm just providing an alternative for the clients you were stealing from." The conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing with a text message. I glanced at it and couldn't suppress a smile. It was from David Kim at the City Economic Development Office, confirming that Rodriguez Marketing Solutions had been awarded the downtown revitalization contract. "Good news?" Ryan asked, noticing my expression. "The best. The city just confirmed that my company will be handling the downtown revitalization project. $800,000 over 3 years, plus performance bonuses if we exceed engagement targets." The number hung in the air between us. Ryan had spent months positioning himself to claim credit for that contract at his new job. Now it was mine, along with the prestige and professional credibility that came with it. "This is insane," Ryan said, running his hands through his hair. "You can't just destroy someone's life because you're angry about a divorce." "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "You can't destroy someone's life just because you're unhappy in your marriage. Yet that's exactly what you tried to do to me." I leaned forward, my voice growing harder. "You didn't just want a divorce, Ryan. You wanted to leave me with nothing while you rode off into the sunset with your new girlfriend and my money. You manipulated me into signing documents I didn't understand, stole from our joint accounts, and planned to abandon me in the most humiliating way possible." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished. "The difference between us is that when I fight back, I do it legally and ethically. Every document in my folder was obtained through proper channels. Every client who left your father's company made an informed choice after learning the truth about their billing. Every federal law enforcement officer who will be investigating Thompson and Associates will be acting on legitimate evidence of actual crimes." I stood up, gathering my folder and purse. "You have 2 choices, Ryan. You can cooperate with the federal investigation, make full restitution to the clients you defrauded, and accept whatever plea agreement your attorney can negotiate. Or you can fight it and spend the next decade in federal prison while your assets are seized to pay damages." Ryan grabbed my wrist as I prepared to leave. "Lisa, please, we can fix this. I'll give you whatever you want in the divorce. We can make this go away." I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then met his eyes directly. "Take your hand off." "Me, Ryan." He released me immediately, but the desperation in his voice intensified. "Just tell me what you want. Money, property, alimony. Name your price." "What I want," I said clearly, "is for you to experience the consequences of your choices. What I want is for the small business owners you stole from to get their money back. What I want is for you to understand that other people aren't just props in your life story." I paused at the edge of the table, looking down at the man I'd once thought I loved. "And what I want is for you to know that abandoning me in this coffee shop was the best thing you ever did for me. Because it forced me to discover who I really am when I'm not trying to please someone who sees me as disposable." Ryan's face crumpled. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "Yes, you did," I said gently. "You planned every detail except for the possibility that I might fight back." As I walked toward the door, I heard Ryan call my name one more time. I turned back to see him sitting alone at our table, staring at the business card I'd left behind. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy, the impulse to comfort and reassure that had defined our relationship for 8 years. Then I remembered the t-shirt with 6 years of disappointment printed on it, the secret apartment, the stolen money, and the months of lies. The sympathy faded, replaced by something stronger and cleaner, indifference. Amanda caught my eye as I reached the door and gave me a thumbs up. I smiled back, feeling lighter than I had in months. Outside, the Portland afternoon was crisp and bright, full of possibility and promise. My phone rang as I walked to my car. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with genuine happiness. "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. Better than I expected. Ryan knows exactly where he stands now, and he's scared. Good. Kate called a few minutes ago. The FBI wants to schedule an interview with you next week to review the evidence, before they execute search warrants on Thompson and Associates. I climbed into my car, starting the engine and pulling out into traffic. Are you nervous about the investigation? Not even a little, Marcus said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We've been completely transparent about everything. The FBI is more likely to ask us to consult on their case than to investigate us. As I drove through the familiar streets of Portland, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 6 weeks ago, I'd been a woman who defined herself entirely through her relationship to someone else. I'd been willing to accept crumbs of affection and validation from a man who saw me as convenient rather than cherished. Now I was the CEO of a growing company, surrounded by people who respected my capabilities and valued my contributions. I was building something meaningful that served my community while providing financial independence and professional fulfillment. But perhaps most importantly, I was discovering what it felt like to be genuinely loved by someone who saw my strength as an asset rather than a threat. Marcus had supported my ambitions, celebrated my successes, and stood by me through every difficult moment of the past month without ever trying to control or diminish me. Lisa, Marcus said, pulling me back to the present. There's something else. I just got off the phone with a reporter from the Portland Business Journal. Word is starting to get out about the Thompson and Associates investigation. They want to interview you about Rodriguez Marketing Solutions and how we're serving the displaced clients. The prospect of media attention would have terrified me 6 weeks ago. Now it sounded like an opportunity to tell our story and build credibility for the business. Schedule it, I said. And Marcus? When they ask about the inspiration for starting the company, I know exactly what I'm going to tell them. What's that? I pulled into the parking lot of our small office space, looking up at the modest sign that read, Rodriguez Marketing Solutions. It wasn't much yet, but it was mine, built on principles of honesty and respect rather than manipulation and exploitation. I'm going to tell them that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is being forced to discover who you really are when you stop trying to be who someone else wants you to be. Marcus was quiet for a moment before responding. That's perfect. And Lisa, I'm proud of you, not just for what you've accomplished, but for who you've become through all of this. As I sat in my car outside my own company, I reflected on the transformation that had brought me here. Ryan had tried to destroy me by taking away everything he thought defined my worth. My marriage, my financial security, my social status. Instead, he'd accidentally given me the greatest gift imaginable, the opportunity to build a life based on my own values and capabilities. The federal investigation would unfold over the coming months, probably resulting in criminal charges and significant financial penalties for Ryan and his father. The divorce would be finalized, returning my share of assets that had been stolen or hidden. Rodriguez Marketing Solutions would continue growing, serving clients with the integrity that Thompson and Associates had abandoned. But the real victory had already been won. I'd discovered that I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I'd ever imagined. I'd learned that genuine partnerships were built on mutual respect rather than one-sided accommodation. I'd found my voice, my purpose, and my power. Ryan Thompson thought he was abandoning a weak, dependent woman at a coffee shop table. Instead, he'd set free someone who would build something better than anything he'd ever imagined possible. And tomorrow, when the Portland Business Journal published their story about the fraudulent marketing firm and the woman who'd exposed their crimes while building an ethical alternative, Ryan would learn the final lesson in the consequences of underestimating someone, that the person you try to destroy might just become unstoppable in the process. My phone buzzed with another text message, this one from Kate Sullivan. Federal. Agents executed search warrants on Thompson and Associates this afternoon. Ryan and his father were arrested an hour ago. Justice is served. I smiled, deleted the message, and walked into my office to continue building the future I'd chosen for myself. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, the new beginning was just getting started. Part 4. The master plan takes shape. The weeks following my discovery of Ryan's systematic betrayal transformed me in ways I never thought possible. Each morning brought new energy, new purpose, and an increasingly clear vision of exactly how I wanted my life to look when the dust settled. What had started as defensive moves to protect myself from financial ruin had evolved into something far more ambitious and satisfying. Rodriguez Marketing Solutions was no longer just a concept sketched on napkins during late-night planning sessions with Marcus. We'd secured office space in a converted warehouse building in the Alberta Arts District, a vibrant area filled with creative businesses and entrepreneurs who valued authenticity over corporate polish. The space itself was modest but perfectly suited to our needs, with exposed brick walls, large windows that flooded the room with natural light, and enough room to grow as we added clients and staff. Marcus had officially joined as my business partner and chief financial officer, bringing not only his expertise, but also his network of contacts throughout Portland's business community. His reputation for ethical practices and strategic thinking opened doors that might have remained closed to a startup led by someone without an established track record. "We're not just building a marketing company," Marcus explained to our first potential investor, a local entrepreneur who'd built a successful chain of organic restaurants. "We're creating a new model for how marketing firms can serve their communities while maintaining complete transparency with clients." The investor, Patricia Nguyen, leaned forward with interest. "Tell me more about this transparency model." I pulled out the presentation we'd developed, slides that clearly outlined our pricing structure, service delivery timelines, and performance metrics. Every client receives detailed monthly reports showing exactly what work was performed, how much time was spent on each task, and what results were achieved. No hidden fees, no inflated hours, no promises we can't deliver. Patricia studied the presentation carefully, occasionally asking pointed questions about our projected growth and competitive advantages. After an hour of detailed discussion, she sat back with a satisfied expression. "This is exactly what the Portland business community needs," she said. "Thompson and Associates has been overcharging and under-delivering for years, but they were one of the few options for comprehensive marketing services. You're offering something better." We left that meeting with our first major investor and a commitment for Patricia to introduce us to other business owners who might benefit from our services. More importantly, we had validation from someone who understood the local market that our approach was not only viable, but desperately needed. The timing couldn't have been better. Kate Sullivan had been strategically sharing information about the ongoing investigation into Thompson and Associates with key figures in Portland's business community, carefully managing the flow of information to maximize the impact when the story became public. Several longtime clients of Ryan's family firm had already begun quietly distancing themselves, creating opportunities for Rodriguez Marketing Solutions to step in with superior service. "The beauty of your situation," Kate explained during one of our weekly strategy meetings, "is that you're not just taking revenge on your ex-husband. You're actually solving a real problem for dozens of local businesses who've been poorly served by Thompson and Associates." She was right. Every client meeting I attended reinforced the same themes. Business owners who'd been frustrated by Thompson and Associates' poor communication, inflated billing, and minimal results were eager to work with someone who prioritized their success over maximizing profit margins. Jennifer Walsh, owner of a successful food truck business, was typical of our new clients. Thompson and Associates charged us $8,000 for a social media campaign that was supposed to run for 6 months, she explained during our initial consultation. After 3 months, our engagement was actually lower than when we started. And when we asked for explanations, they told us the algorithms had changed and we needed to pay for additional services. Marcus and I exchanged glances across the conference table. The pattern was becoming depressingly familiar. "What kind of additional services?" I asked. "Influencer partnerships," they said. "Another $5,000 to connect us with." Food bloggers who would promote our trucks. Jennifer's frustration was evident. We paid the money, but the influencers they connected us with had tiny followings and didn't even specialize in food content. It was obvious they'd just found random people willing to post about us for $50 each. I opened my laptop and pulled up a preliminary social media audit I'd prepared for her business. "Jennifer, look at this. Your food truck concept, locations, and menu are exactly what Portland's young professional demographic is looking for. With the right strategy, you should be seeing significant growth in followers and customer engagement." Over the next hour, I outlined a comprehensive marketing approach that focused on authentic storytelling, strategic partnerships with local events, and content that showcased not just the food, but the passion and craftsmanship behind Jennifer's business. The cost was less than half what Thompson & Associates had been charging, with clearly defined deliverables and success metrics. "This is incredible," Jennifer said, reviewing the proposal. "You actually understand our business and our customers. Thompson & Associates treated us like we were just another generic client." By the end of the meeting, Jennifer had signed a 6-month contract with Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, becoming our 8th client in just 3 weeks of operation. More importantly, she'd agreed to introduce us to other food truck owners and restaurant managers who might benefit from our services. The growth was exhilarating, but also demanding. Marcus and I were working 12-hour days, splitting time, between developing strategies for existing clients and pitching new prospects. We'd hired Amanda from Brew & Bean as our first full-time employee, her natural communication skills and understanding of Portland's culture, making her perfect for client relations and social media management. "I never thought I'd leave the coffee shop," Amanda admitted during her first week at Rodriguez Marketing Solutions. "But what you're building here feels so much more meaningful than just serving lattes. We're actually helping people build their dreams." Her enthusiasm was infectious and reminded me daily of why I'd chosen this path. This wasn't just about getting revenge on Ryan or even building financial security for myself. I was creating something that genuinely served my community while providing opportunities for other people to grow and succeed. The validation came from unexpected sources. Dr. Michael Torres, a respected business professor at Portland State University, reached out after hearing about our company through his network of local entrepreneurs. "I'm working on a case study about ethical business practices in the marketing industry," he explained during our phone conversation. "Your company's approach to transparency and client service represents exactly the kind of innovation that business schools should be teaching." He arranged to visit our office and interview our team about our business model, client relationships, and growth strategy. The 3-hour session felt more like a consultation than an academic interview, with Dr. Torres asking thoughtful questions that helped us refine our own understanding of what we were building. "What you've created here isn't just a better marketing company," he said as the interview concluded. "You've developed a framework that could transform how service businesses operate across multiple industries." His words carried additional weight when he mentioned that the university was planning to feature Rodriguez Marketing Solutions in their entrepreneurship program as an example of how ethical business practices could create competitive advantages. But the real test of our approach came when the city of Portland officially awarded us the downtown revitalization contract. The project was high-profile and politically sensitive, requiring us to balance the interests of existing businesses, new developments, and community groups who had strong opinions about gentrification and economic development. David Kim, the city's economic development director, had been impressed not only by our proposal, but by our track record of working collaboratively with diverse stakeholders. Thompson & Associates always approached these projects as if they knew better than the communities they were supposed to serve, David explained during our contract signing meeting. "Your proposal demonstrates real understanding of Portland's unique character and the importance of inclusive growth." The contract, was worth more than the total revenue of Rodriguez Marketing Solutions' first year, but it also came with enormous responsibility. Success would establish our credibility for larger projects throughout the Pacific Northwest. Failure would damage not only our reputation, but also the city's revitalization efforts. Marcus and I spent weeks developing a comprehensive strategy that involved extensive community input, partnerships with local arts organizations, and a phased approach that would allow us to adjust our tactics based on early results. Instead of the top-down approach that had characterized Thompson & Associates' work, we built our campaign around authentic stories from business owners, residents, and community leaders who understood what made downtown Portland special. "This is what marketing should be," said Carmen Rodriguez, a local artist whose murals had become iconic symbols of Portland's creative culture. "You're not trying to impose some outside vision on our community. You're helping us tell our own story better." Carmen's endorsement led to partnerships with other local artists, musicians, and cultural organizations that gave our campaign credibility and authenticity that couldn't be manufactured through traditional advertising approaches. The progress was measurable and immediate. Within 6 weeks of launching the Downtown Revitalization campaign, foot traffic in the target area had increased by 23%, with corresponding increases in sales for participating businesses. Local media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, focusing on the collaborative approach and community engagement rather than slick marketing tactics. More importantly, other cities began reaching out to inquire about our services. Seattle's Economic Development Office requested a consultation about their own downtown challenges. Eugene wanted to discuss a comprehensive rebranding effort for their arts district. Vancouver's Tourism Board was interested in our approach to authentic cultural marketing. "We're not just building a local business anymore," Marcus observed during one of our evening planning sessions. "We're creating something that could have regional or even national impact." The thought was both exciting and daunting. 6 months earlier, I'd been a graphic designer whose biggest professional worry was meeting deadlines for logo redesigns. Now I was running a company that was being recognized as a model for ethical business practices and innovative marketing strategies. But the personal transformation was even more profound than the professional success. Working with Marcus had shown me what genuine partnership looked like, built on mutual respect, shared values, and complementary strengths, rather than the one-sided accommodation that had defined my marriage to Ryan. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said one evening as we reviewed client reports in our office, the Portland skyline twinkling through our windows. "This started as a professional partnership, but it's become something more for me." I looked up from my laptop, meeting his eyes directly. "For me too. I don't want to complicate our working relationship," he continued carefully, "but I also don't want to pretend that what I feel for you is purely professional." The honesty in his voice, the respect he showed for both my feelings and our business partnership, stood in stark contrast to Ryan's manipulative approach to relationships. Marcus was offering himself as an equal partner in both business and life, someone who would support my ambitions rather than trying to control or diminish them. "Marcus," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand, "what we've built, together, both professionally and personally, is exactly what I want my life to look like." The kiss that followed felt like a celebration of everything we'd accomplished and a promise of everything we could build together. Unlike the desperate passion of my early relationship with Ryan, this felt steady and sure, built on foundation of genuine friendship and shared purpose. Our personal relationship deepened alongside our professional success, each reinforcing the other in ways that felt natural and sustainable. Marcus understood my drive to build something meaningful because he shared it. He supported my ambitions because my success contributed to our shared vision rather than threatening his ego. When the Portland Business Journal reached out to request an interview about Rodriguez Marketing Solutions' rapid growth and innovative approach, Marcus insisted that I be the primary spokesperson. "This is your vision," he said firmly when I suggested we share the interview. You're the one who had the courage to build something new from the wreckage of what Ryan tried to do to you. The story needs to be told from your perspective. The CRE interview, scheduled for the following week, would be my first major media appearance and an opportunity to share our story with a broader audience. More importantly, it would mark the public emergence of Rodriguez Marketing Solutions as a significant player in Portland's business community. But first, there was one final piece of business to handle. Kate Sullivan had called to inform me that Ryan's attorney had requested a meeting to discuss potential settlement terms for our divorce. The federal investigation into Thompson and Associates was proceeding exactly as we'd hoped, with evidence mounting daily of systematic fraud and client deception. Your husband is in a very difficult position, Kate explained. The federal prosecutors are building a strong case, and his new employers at Brennan and Associates are distancing themselves to avoid being caught up in the scandal. He needs this divorce resolved quickly and quietly. What's he offering? Full restoration of all marital assets, including his share of Thompson and Associates, plus additional compensation for the emotional distress and financial manipulation. He also wants a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from discussing the details of your marriage or his business practices. I considered the offer carefully. The financial terms were more generous than I'd expected, reflecting Ryan's desperation to minimize the damage to his reputation and career prospects. But the non-disclosure agreement was problematic for reasons he probably hadn't considered. Kate, if I sign that agreement, can I still testify in the federal investigation? You'd be legally required to testify if subpoenaed, but the agreement would prevent you from speaking to media or writing about your experiences. That was unacceptable. My story wasn't just about personal revenge anymore. It was about exposing systematic fraud that had harmed dozens of small businesses and demonstrating that victims of financial manipulation could fight back successfully. Other people deserved to know that recovery and justice were possible. Counter. With this, I told Kate, I'll accept the financial terms but no non-disclosure agreement. Ryan chose to make our personal business public when he humiliated me at that coffee shop. He doesn't get to control the narrative now that the truth is coming out. Kate smiled with obvious satisfaction. I'll present the counteroffer this afternoon. Given his legal exposure, I doubt his attorney will push back very hard. As I left Kate's office and walked through downtown Portland toward my own company's headquarters, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. 6 months ago, I'd been a woman who defined herself entirely through her relationship to someone else, willing to accept scraps of affection and validation from a man who saw me as convenient rather than cherished. Now I was building something that mattered, surrounded by people who respected my capabilities and valued my contributions. I was discovering what it felt like to be genuinely loved by someone who saw my strength as an asset rather than a threat. But perhaps most importantly, I was learning that the best revenge wasn't destruction, but creation. Instead of trying to tear down what Ryan had built, I was building something better. Instead of seeking to hurt him, I was focused on healing the damage he'd done to others. Instead of dwelling on what I'd lost, I was celebrating what I'd gained. The meeting with Ryan's attorney was scheduled for the following afternoon, immediately before my interview with the Portland Business Journal. The timing felt perfect. I would close one chapter of my life and begin another, all in the space of a few hours. Ryan had no idea what was coming. He'd spent months planning what he thought would be my destruction, never imagining that I might emerge stronger than before. Tomorrow, he would learn that abandoning me at that coffee shop had been the catalyst for everything he was about to lose. And I couldn't wait to see his face when he realized that the woman he'd tried to discard had built something more successful than anything he'd ever imagined possible. The morning of my scheduled meeting with Ryan's attorney dawned crisp and clear, Portland's autumn air carrying the promise of change. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit that projected confidence without ostentation, choosing accessories that spoke of success earned rather than inherited. As I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. 6 months ago, she had been someone who apologized for taking up space. Today, she owned every room she entered. Marcus was already at the office when I arrived, finalizing preparations for our afternoon interview with the Portland Business Journal. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of growth for Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, with new clients signing on faster than we could expand our team to serve them properly. The reporter called to confirm, Marcus said, looking up from his laptop. She's particularly interested in the ethical business model and how we're serving the clients who were displaced by Thompson & Associates. I poured myself coffee from the machine Amanda had insisted we install, savoring the ritual that had become so meaningful since that devastating day at Brew & Bean. Did she mention anything about the federal investigation? Carefully. She's obviously aware of it, but she's focusing on our story rather than Ryan's downfall. Which is perfect, actually. It keeps the narrative about what we've built rather than what we've torn down. The distinction mattered more than Marcus probably realized. This had never been about destroying Ryan, despite what he might believe. It had been about refusing to let him destroy me, and in that refusal, discovering capabilities I never knew I possessed. My phone buzzed with a text from Kate Sullivan. Settlement meeting moved to 11 a.m. Ryan's attorney wants this resolved. Before lunch. He's scared. I showed the message to Marcus, who smiled grimly. Good. Fear makes people sloppy, and Ryan's been sloppy from the beginning. The law offices of Sullivan & Associates occupied a restored Victorian mansion in the Pearl District, its elegantly appointed conference rooms providing a civilized setting for what often amounted to financial warfare. Kate met me in the lobby, her expression conveying both confidence and satisfaction. Ryan's attorney called an hour ago with a final settlement offer, she said as we walked toward the conference room. Full asset restoration, $50,000 in additional compensation, and a formal apology. No non-disclosure agreement. He's capitulating completely. The federal prosecutors met with his attorney yesterday. Apparently, the evidence we provided has led to additional discoveries that make Ryan's situation much worse than we initially realized. Kate paused outside the conference room door. Lisa, I need you to prepare yourself. Ryan is going to look like a broken man in there. I took a deep breath, centering myself for what was likely to be the final face-to-face conversation I would ever have with my soon-to-be ex-husband. I'm ready. Ryan was already seated at the polished mahogany table when we entered, flanked by his attorney and looking exactly as Kate had predicted. The confident, controlling man who had abandoned me at a coffee shop had been replaced by someone who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight loss, and his hands trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. Lisa, he said, attempting a smile that fell flat. You look well. I am well, I replied, taking the seat directly across from him. Better than I've been in years, actually. His attorney, a stern woman in her 50s named Margaret Chen, slid a document across the table. These are the final settlement terms. As you can see, we're prepared to be very generous in exchange for a quick resolution. I reviewed the paperwork carefully, noting that the terms were indeed everything Kate had indicated. Ryan was essentially surrendering all claims to our shared assets while providing additional compensation that would ensure my financial independence for years to come. This is acceptable, I said, signing the document with deliberate precision. Though I have to say, Ryan, this is much more generous than the settlement you were probably planning when you had me sign those trust documents. Ryan flinched as if I'd struck him. Lisa, I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far. Really? I set down my pen and met his gaze directly. So when you were systematically moving our money into secret accounts, that wasn't intentional. When you were billing clients for services you never provided, that was accidental? When you plan to humiliate me in public before disappearing to Seattle with your girlfriend, that just happened spontaneously? That's enough, Margaret Chen interjected. The settlement terms have been agreed upon. There's no need to rehash past grievances. But Ryan held up a hand to silence his attorney. No, she deserves to have her say. Lisa, I made terrible choices. I was selfish and cruel, and I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air between us, and I found myself studying Ryan's face for any sign of the man I had once loved. He was there, buried beneath layers of fear and regret, but he felt like a stranger now. I appreciate the apology, I said finally. But what I really want you to understand is that abandoning me at Bruin Bean was the kindest thing you ever did for me. Ryan's expression crumpled with confusion. I don't understand. You freed me from the illusion that our marriage was worth saving. You forced me to discover who I am when I'm not trying to please someone who sees me as disposable. I gathered my purse and stood. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you for showing me that I deserve better than what you were capable of giving. As I walked toward the door, Ryan called my name one final time. Lisa, I heard about your company, about the city contract. I'm genuinely proud of what you've accomplished. I turned back to face him, seeing something in his expression that might have been genuine admiration mixed with profound regret. Take care of yourself, Ryan. And next time you marry someone, try actually loving them. The settlement was finalized within an hour, with documents filed immediately to expedite the divorce proceedings. As Kate and I walked back to my car, I felt a profound sense of closure settling over me like a comfortable blanket. How do you feel? Kate asked. Free, I said without hesitation. Completely, utterly free. The afternoon interview with the Portland Business Journal took place in our office, with reporter Sarah Martinez asking thoughtful questions about our business model, growth strategy, and vision for ethical marketing practices. Marcus and Amanda joined for portions of the interview, creating a dynamic conversation about collaborative leadership and community-focused business development. What inspired you to start Rodriguez Marketing Solutions? Sarah asked as we concluded the formal portion of the interview. I considered the question carefully, thinking about how to summarize a journey that had transformed every aspect of my life. I started this company because I realized that being treated poorly had taught me exactly how I wanted to treat others. Every client who had been overcharged or underserved by other firms showed me an opportunity to do business differently. And the personal cost of starting over professionally while going through a divorce? The personal cost of staying in a situation that wasn't serving me would have been much higher, I replied. Sometimes the most frightening thing you can do is also the most necessary. Sarah nodded, making notes on her tablet. One final question. What advice would you give to other people who might be facing similar challenges in their personal or professional lives? I thought about Amanda, who had left the security of her coffee shop job to join our startup. About the small business owners who had trusted us with their marketing despite our lack of established track record. About Marcus, who had risked his own consulting practice to partner with someone he'd barely known 6 months earlier. Don't underestimate your own resilience, I said. When everything falls apart, you might discover that you're capable of building something better than what you lost. But you have to be willing to let go of what isn't working before you can create what will. After Sarah left, Marcus and I walked through downtown Portland as the sun set behind the West Hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The city felt different to me now, no longer a place where I'd simply existed, but somewhere I was actively contributing to the community's growth and success. The article will run next week, Marcus said, stopping at a crosswalk, along with a sidebar about ethical business practices and how they can create competitive advantages. Dr. Torres will be pleased. His case study is really taking shape. We walked in comfortable silence for several blocks, both lost in thoughts about how rapidly our lives had changed. 6 months ago, we'd been acquaintances who occasionally collaborated on design projects. Now we were business partners, lovers, and co-creators of something that was reshaping Portland's marketing landscape. "Lisa," Marcus said as we reached the Willamette River, its dark waters reflecting the city lights. "I have something to tell you." I turned to face him, noting the serious expression on his face. "What is it?" "I got a call this afternoon from the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. They want to hire Rodriguez Marketing Solutions to consult on their downtown revitalization efforts." The opportunity was enormous, potentially doubling our revenue while establishing our reputation throughout the Pacific Northwest. But it would also require significant expansion and resources we didn't currently possess. "What did you tell them?" "That we'd consider it, but only if we could maintain our Portland operations and ethical standards." Marcus paused, studying my expression. "Lisa, this could be the beginning of something much larger than we originally envisioned." I looked out over the river, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been a woman who rarely made decisions without consulting her husband, who apologized for having opinions that differed from his, who had gradually made herself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. Now I was being asked to expand a business I'd built from nothing, to serve communities throughout the region, to become the kind of leader I'd never imagined I could be. "Let's do it," I said, surprising myself with the immediate certainty in my voice. "But we do it right. We hire carefully, we maintain our standards, and we never compromise our values for growth." Marcus smiled, pulling me into his arms as the Portland skyline twinkled behind us. "Have I mentioned that I love your ambition?" "Show me," I said, kissing him with all the passion and promise of a future we were building together. 3 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the downtown Marriott, adjusting my name tag for the Portland Business Women's Leadership Conference. The Portland Business Journal article had generated tremendous interest in Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, leading to speaking invitations, consulting requests, and a waiting list of potential clients that stretched into the following year. Today's presentation was titled, "Building Success from Setbacks: How Personal Crisis Can Fuel Professional Innovation." The conference organizers had specifically requested that I share my story as inspiration for other women facing their own professional and personal challenges. As I waited backstage, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Packed house out there. Standing room only. You're going to be amazing." The thought that a year ago I would have been terrified to speak in front of 5 people, let alone 500, seemed almost impossible to believe. But everything impossible had become possible once I'd stopped limiting myself to what others thought I could achieve. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conference moderator announced, "please welcome Lisa Rodriguez, CEO of Rodriguez Marketing Solutions, and this year's recipient of the Portland Business Journal's Entrepreneur of the Year Award." I walked onto the stage, to enthusiastic applause, looking out over an audience of women who were building businesses, advancing careers, and changing their communities. Some faces showed curiosity, others recognition, but all reflected the kind of determined optimism that had carried me through my own transformation. "A year ago," I began, "my husband abandoned me at a coffee shop, thinking he was ending my story. Today, I'm here to tell you that sometimes the most devastating moments of our lives are actually the beginning of our greatest achievements." I told them about the t-shirt with 6 years of disappointment printed on it, about discovering financial fraud, about the choice between accepting victimhood or fighting for justice. I shared the practical steps of building a business while navigating divorce, the importance of ethical partnerships, and the power of turning pain into purpose. But mostly, I talked about the revelation that had changed everything. The understanding that I had been settling for someone else's limited vision of who I could be. The woman my ex-husband married was someone who made herself small to fit into his idea of an appropriate wife, I said, looking directly into the audience. The woman I became when I stopped trying to fit into anyone else's expectations turned out to be someone I actually liked, someone I respected, someone I was proud to be. The applause was immediate and sustained, but what moved me most were the individual faces I could see nodding in recognition, women who understood the courage required to rebuild your life from the ground up. During the Q&A session, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Ms. Rodriguez, how did you find the confidence to start over when everything felt hopeless?" I considered the question, remembering the woman who had sat alone at Brew and Bean, feeling like her world had ended. I realized that I had two choices. I could spend my energy trying to convince someone to value me who had already decided I was disposable, or I could spend that same energy building something that reflected my actual worth. "But how did you know you had the skills to succeed?" "I didn't," I admitted. "But I knew I had the skills to try, and I figured out the rest as I went along." Sometimes confidence comes from acting brave until you actually become brave. After the presentation, I was surrounded by women wanting to share their own stories, ask for advice, or simply express appreciation for the honesty of my presentation. Each conversation reminded me that my story wasn't unique in its pain, but hopefully unique in demonstrating that recovery and success were possible. As the conference concluded and I gathered my materials, I noticed a familiar figure approaching from across the lobby. Ryan stood near the hotel's entrance, looking uncertain and somehow smaller than I remembered. I walked over to him, curious about what had brought him here. "Ryan, this is unexpected." "I read about your award," he said, his voice quiet. "I wanted to congratulate you in person." He looked older, worn down by the federal investigation and the collapse of his career prospects. The charges against him had been reduced through a plea agreement, but his reputation in Portland's business community was destroyed beyond repair. "Thank you," I said simply. "How are you doing?" "I'm moving to Denver next month, starting over. With a small firm there." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Lisa, I watched your presentation from the back of the room. You were magnificent up there." The compliment was genuine, and I found myself touched by it despite everything that had happened between us. "I hope Denver gives you the fresh start you need." "I kept thinking while you were speaking about the woman I married 8 years ago. She was remarkable, but I was too selfish to see it." Ryan's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I threw away the best thing in my life because I thought I deserved something more exciting. I was an idiot." I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse and the painful wisdom that comes from losing something irreplaceable through your own choices. "We both learned important lessons, Ryan. Mine just happened to be more useful." He laughed despite himself, a sound that reminded me briefly of the man I had once loved. "That's very generous of you." "I'm not being generous. I'm being honest. If you hadn't left me at that coffee shop, I might never have discovered who I really am when I stopped trying to please other people." As Ryan walked away, disappearing, into the Portland evening, I felt the final piece of my old life click into place. The anger was gone, replaced by something more powerful. Indifference mixed with gratitude for the lesson he'd inadvertently taught me about my own strength. Marcus was waiting for me outside the hotel, holding 2 cups of coffee from Brew and Bean. "How did it go?" "Better than I ever imagined possible," I said, accepting the coffee and the kiss that followed. "And you'll never guess who showed up to hear my speech." As we walked through downtown Portland toward our car, I told him about the encounter with Ryan, the sold-out presentation, and the dozen business cards I'd collected from women who wanted to discuss potential collaborations or mentorship opportunities. "You know what this means, don't you?" Marcus said as we reached our car. "What?" "You've officially outgrown Portland. Rodriguez Marketing Solutions is going to need to expand faster than we planned if we're going to serve all the people who want to work with us." The thought was both exhilarating and daunting. Success had arrived faster and more completely than I'd dared to hope, bringing opportunities I'd never imagined and responsibilities I'd never expected. But as we drove through the city where I'd rebuilt my life, past the coffee shop where my transformation had begun, toward the home Marcus and I now shared, I felt ready for whatever came next. The woman who had been abandoned at table 14 had discovered something her ex-husband never understood: that the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, but creation. Instead of tearing down what he'd built, I'd built something better. Instead of trying to hurt him, I'd focused on healing others. Instead of dwelling on what I'd lost, I'd celebrated what I'd gained. And tomorrow, when the Portland Business Journal hit newsstands with my story on the front page, Ryan would learn the final lesson about underestimating someone: that the person you try to destroy might just become unstoppable in the process. The best part wasn't that I'd won. The best part was that I'd become someone worth winning as. Up. Next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.